Hi, last time we discussed some of the definitions and general principles in endocrinology. Today we'll discuss the hypothalamus and the pituitary and the relationship between them. Let's start with the hypothalamus. In this slide, you can see that the hypothalamus is part of the brain. So it's considered to be the interface of the nervous and the endocrine system since it regulates vital autonomic processes and also some of endocrine functions. In fact, it's one of the main glands together with the pituitary of the endocrine system. Okay, so the hypothalamic hormones are either releasing hormones or release inhibiting hormones. So as you can see in the acronyms in the left column, you can see that panay RH sila, no? So they are releasing hormones. So kaya siya madaling matandaan. Okay? So for thyrotropin releasing hormone, corticotropin releasing hormone, gonadotropin releasing hormones, and growth hormone releasing hormone or somatotropin releasing hormone. Okay, so in that case, dalawa yung pangalan niya, possible names. Although for all hormones, ay marami talaga silang pangalan. Then we have prolactin release hormone. Okay, so releasing hormone. So PRH or PRL ang prolactin. Then as you can see here, as you may notice, that PRH is basically equal to TRH. So it's the same thing. TRH and thyrotropin releasing hormone is the same molecule. Okay, so may expound yan later on sa mga discussions pa natin. Then for inhibiting hormones, hindi lahat ng may releasing hormone ay mayroong corresponding na inhibiting hormone. So, meron lang ay yung growth hormone, inhibiting hormone, and yung prolactin inhibiting factor. And another thing na amazing dito, kung amazing man siya, is that meron siyang ibang pangalan. And actually, hindi siya ibang pangalan, it's basically the same molecule as dopamine, yung prolactin inhibiting factor. Or we can also call it prolactin inhibiting hormone. Okay, so it's the same as dopamine. So that too will be discussed in much more detail later on. Okay, so now we go to the pituitary gland. So the pituitary gland is composed of the pars intermedia or pars nervosa and the pars distal. So this is a cross section. So medyo magulo siya, no? Merong pars intermedia in this part. Then also the pars nervosa and the pars distalis. Okay? So it's connected by the infundibular stalk to the hypothalamus. So this is not a clear cross-section, but it just shows yung mga iba't iba niyang parts. Okay? So the pituitary gland is also called the hypophysis. It is connected to the hypothalamus via the hypophyseal stalk or the infundibulum. It has three parts: the anterior lobe or the adenohypophysis, the posterior lobe or the neurohypophysis, and the intermediate lobe or the pars intermedia. Okay, so ang mga hormones naman ng pituitary is classified into tropic and non-tropic axis. So this classification has been discussed already dun sa general principles. So the tropic hormones are those that stimulate other endocrine gland for secretion. So it's a hormone that stimulates endocrine glands. Okay? So examples ng anterior pituitary hormones that are tropic is that thyroid stimulating hormone or TSH. It stimulates the thyroid gland to release thyroid hormone. And ACTH, it stimulates the adrenal cortex or the adrenocorticotropic hormone. It stimulates the adrenal cortex. Then the luteinizing hormone which stimulates the gonads. Okay? So may iba pang mga examples, so those are just three. Then for the non-tropic hormones, these are hormones that usually exert the effects on non-endocrine tissues. So, they do not target endocrine glands anymore. So, that means yung target gland nila does not secrete hormone in response to them. Okay? So, examples ng anterior pituitary hormones ay growth hormone, which targets bones, muscles, etc. In fact, it actually targets all cells of the body. Then, we have also prolactin, which targets mammary gland and smooth muscles. Okay? So, yun yung mga non-tropic hormones since their target gland is no longer an endocrine gland. Okay, so this is a good diagram of the hypothalamo-pituitary axis. It's what we call them. Okay, so it shows the hypothalamus and the parts of the pituitary gland and the hormone it secretes, yung mga parts na yun, each part. Then the target glands and target cells or tissues ng mga hormones that is released by the pituitary. For instance, this is the anterior pituitary. So it releases growth hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, the thyroid stimulating hormone, FSH and LH. LH is, by the way, called the interstitial cell stimulating hormone in males. Okay? But it's also called LH in males. Okay? So FSH and LH for... Then we have prolactin. Okay? So those are the pituitary, anterior pituitary hormones. Okay? So as you can see, hindi lahat ay glands. Then the posterior pituitary na, for lalo na ang posterior pituitary, it does not actually release any what you call tropic hormones. So non-tropic to mga hormones na to, antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. Okay? So antidiuretic hormone is basically targeting the kidney in response to changes or imbalance in the electrolytes and water. Then yung oxytocin is released in response to parturition and so it stimulates letdown of milk in breasts and contraction of muscles of the uterus. So yun yung mga functions nila. Okay? They do not stimulate other glands or tissues to release hormones. So that's why they are non-tropic. Okay? So dito sa posterior pituitary, parehong non-tropic. Then you have to remember, sa anterior pituitary, dalawa yung non-tropic, yung growth hormone and prolactin. All the rest, the adrenocorticotropic hormone, the thyroid stimulating hormone, and the FSH-LH are all tropic hormones since they stimulate their target glands by to release hormones as well. Okay? So this is the basic diagram how hypothalamus and the pituitary functions. Okay? So the hypothalamus releasing hormones to the anterior pituitary gland, and the anterior pituitary gland releases stimulating hormones to their target glands. Okay? Yung intermediate lobe has one important hormone which is not mentioned previously. Ito yung alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone. So it stimulates the skin to produce melanin, okay, in response to UV light. Okay? Then in this illustration, it is shown that yung posterior pituitary gland ay walang releasing hormone and stimulating hormone, walang releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, and walang stimulating hormone na nanggagaling sa kanya. Okay? This is just to emphasize that the posterior pituitary gland hormones are actually hypothalamic hormones. They are synthesized and secreted by the hypothalamus. Dumadaan lang siya doon sa posterior pituitary gland. Okay? So hindi siya doon na ma-manufacture, unlike sa anterior pituitary gland na may mga specific cells that are stimulated by the releasing hormone to produce the hormone. Ang posterior pituitary gland ay daanan lang siya, conduit lang siya ng hypothalamic hormones. Okay? So remember that. Then also we should not forget that the hypothalamus also releases inhibiting hormones to the anterior pituitary gland. Okay? So just going back, so we have this list of the releasing hormones and the release inhibiting hormones. Okay? Ito lang yung something that you have to memorize somehow. But if you get a grasp kung ano yung mga pangalan, then no need to memorize anymore. In fact, going back dito sa ating mapapansin nyo na para matandaan nyo na kung alin yung hypothalamic hormone at alin yung pituitary hormone, lahat ng hypothalamic hormone ay releasing hormone and inhibiting hormone. So you have to remember that. Then pagdating mo sa pituitary glands, mga stimulating hormone na siya. So walang pituitary hormones na ang pangalan ay releasing hormone or inhibiting hormone. Okay? Okay, so the following video is a summary of what we've discussed.
The hypothalamus is a small region situated directly above the brainstem. It is made up of a collection of nuclei with a variety of functions, but in general the hypothalamus is involved in controlling the two H's, homeostasis and hormones. Homeostasis is a term used to describe the maintenance of balance or stability in a biological system. The hypothalamus can maintain homeostasis either by exerting direct influence over the autonomic nervous system or by causing the release of hormones. The hypothalamus manipulates hormone release primarily by controlling the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is a hormone-secreting gland that sits just below the hypothalamus. It is sometimes called the master gland because it not only secretes many extremely important hormones, but it also regulates the activity of other hormone-secreting glands throughout the body. The pituitary gland consists of two lobes, called the anterior and the posterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary is responsible for the release of a number of hormones that have widespread effects throughout the body. They include growth hormone, which is involved with growth, follicle-stimulating hormone, which plays a role in development and reproduction, luteinizing hormone, which is essential to testosterone production and reproduction, adrenocorticotropic hormone, which is involved with the stress and fear responses, thyroid-stimulating hormone, which is important to healthy metabolism, and prolactin, which promotes milk production in females. The release of these hormones is controlled by the hypothalamus, which sends signals in the form of releasing hormones to tell the anterior pituitary when to secrete its hormones. The posterior pituitary also secretes two hormones, but does not synthesize them. Instead, they are synthesized by the hypothalamus and then sent to the posterior pituitary for release into the bloodstream. The names of these hormones are oxytocin and vasopressin. Oxytocin has important roles in facilitating childbirth and lactation, but is also thought to have a role in compassion and social bonding. Vasopressin's main functions are to control urine output and regulate blood pressure.
Okay, so that's it for this topic. Thank you very much for listening. And our next topic will be tropic and non-tropic HP axis.